Stay in the back room, Mom. We'll come get you when dinner's done. That was my son's voice on the phone, 3 days before the party. Not a question. A direction. The kind of tone you use when you're telling someone where to park, not where your mother should stand on the night you celebrate the biggest promotion of your career. I told myself I misheard. I told myself he was stressed. I'd been telling myself things like that for years, and I was very, very good at it. My name is not important. What is important is that I'm 63 years old. I spent 40 of those years being a mother first and a person second, and I am only now, beginning to understand what that cost me. My son's name is Garrett. He's 36. He works in corporate finance in Chicago, and he is very successful, and I say that with no bitterness because I helped make him that way. Not the finance part, the standing up straight part, the calling people back part, the knowing your worth part. Those were mine. I gave those to him like I gave him everything else, without thinking to keep any for myself. His wife's name is Noelle. She is 34. She has a master's degree in communications, and she has never once, in 6 years, called me anything other than Garrett's mom. Not by accident, I've noticed. I should start from the beginning because that's the only way any of this makes sense. I raised Garrett alone from the time he was 9 years old. His father, my husband of 11 years, left on a Tuesday in March. I remember because I had just made a pot of chili, and I never made chili again after that. Some things get ruined by association. I was working as a bookkeeper for a small dental practice, and I was good at it, but good doesn't always mean enough. There were months I paid the electric bill 2 weeks late. There were months I bought the store brand everything and told Garrett it tasted the same, and he believed me because he was 9 and he trusted me. I did not ask for help from my sister. I did not ask for help from my parents, who were still alive then and who had a little saved. I was proud in the way that poor people sometimes are. Not wealthy proud. Not superior proud. Just the kind of proud that comes from not wanting anyone to see how close to the edge you are. Garrett knew, though. Children always know. When he was 12, he told me he was going to make enough money someday that I would never have to worry again. He said it at the dinner table, very seriously, between bites of the store-brand pasta I'd made with jarred sauce. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was so sincere it made my chest hurt. I said, "I know you will, baby." He did. He really did. But somewhere between that 12-year-old boy with sauce on his chin and the man in the tailored suit who told me to stay in the back room, something happened. And I spent a long time trying to figure out if it was something he did or something I allowed. Garrett got a full scholarship to a school in Ohio. I drove him there myself, the two of us with everything he owned packed into my 2004 Camry, with the passenger window that wouldn't roll all the way down. He held a paper cup of gas station coffee and didn't say much, and I didn't either, because some things don't need words. I hugged him in the parking lot of his dormitory and I said, "Call me when you get settled." He called that night, and the night after. For the first month, he called almost every day. Then he met people. Then he met Noelle in his junior year. Then the calls got shorter, and the gaps got longer. And I told myself that was just growing up. That was what I had worked for. I had worked for him to not need me. I just didn't expect it to feel the way it did. When he got his first real job offer, the one in Chicago, the one that changed everything, he called me from the campus library, whispering, and I could hear the grin in his voice even through the quiet. I cried in my kitchen. Happy tears. The real kind. I paid for his security deposit on his first apartment. I told him it was a gift. He said, "Thanks, Mom, I'll pay you back." He didn't, but I didn't need him to. That's not why I'm telling you this. I also paid for his suit. The first real one, the gray one he wore to his first day. He sent me a photo from the elevator lobby. He looked like a man. Not my little boy, but a man, and I thought, I did that. I helped make that. That was enough. It should have been enough. 2 years after Chicago, Garrett married Noelle. The wedding was in Connecticut, which is where her family is from. Her parents are the kind of people who have a lake house, not a cabin, a lake house with a dock and a kayak that nobody uses, and a wine rack in the kitchen the size of a small closet. I wore the blue dress I'd bought on sale. I had it altered at a seamstress on my street for $32. It looked nice. I thought it looked nice. At the wedding, I sat at a table with Noelle's aunt, her college roommate, and two couples I had never met. When people asked how I knew the groom, I said, I'm his mother. And there was always a half-second pause before they said, oh, how wonderful. The kind of pause that means they hadn't known there was a mother, hadn't been told, hadn't been prepared. Garrett danced with me once. A quick song knew the end of the reception. Noelle watched from the bar. She was smiling, but her eyes were not. I drove home alone that night 6 hours, because I had told Garrett not to worry about getting me a room at the hotel block. I said I didn't want to impose. He didn't argue. I should have argued with myself. In the 3 years after the wedding, I helped them more than I should say out loud. There was the car situation. Noelle's lease ran out, and they needed a bridge payment, and Garrett called on a Wednesday evening, and I could hear in his voice that it was hard to ask, and so I made it easy. I transferred the money before I hung up. There was the time the furnace in their condo needed replacing, partially. I covered what their emergency fund didn't. There was the trip to Portugal that I helped with, just a little, because Garrett said Noelle had been having a hard year. I sent what I could. I didn't go on a vacation myself that year, or the year after. But I didn't think about it that way at the time. There was my retirement account, which I had been contributing to carefully since my mid-40s. Late, I know, but I was late to a lot of things. I took a small withdrawal once. I told myself once. It was twice. I am not saying Garrett asked for all of it. He didn't. Some of it I offered. Some of it I offered because I knew he wouldn't ask. And there is a difference between being generous and being so afraid of being unnecessary that you keep handing things over just to stay in the room. I didn't know that then. I do now. The party was for his promotion. Senior vice president at 36. It was a big deal. I knew it was a big deal because Noelle's family talked about it the way people talk about things that reflect well on them. Garrett called me 2 weeks before. We want you there, Mom. Obviously. I should have paid attention to that word. When someone says obviously, sometimes it means, of course, and sometimes it means I have to invite you, and we both know why. I drove up on a Friday, 9 hours. I had offered to fly, but Garrett said not to bother, and I took that to mean the drive was fine. Not that my coming was a bother. Another thing I told myself? They live in a row house now, their own, not a condo anymore. Noelle's parents helped with the down payment, I know that, though nobody told me directly. The house is beautiful. Clean lines, white walls, a kitchen island with stools that cost more than my first car. I notice things like that because I am good with numbers and I notice what things cost. When I arrived, Noelle was in the middle of arranging things with a woman who appeared to be a party planner. Garrett was on a work call. I stood in the entryway with my overnight bag for about 4 minutes before Noelle said, without looking up, the guest room's the second door on the left. I found it myself. The party was Saturday evening. 40, maybe 50 people. Garrett's colleagues, their spouses, Noelle's friends from the neighborhood, her sister and brother-in-law, her parents with their Connecticut ease. Catered food. Past hors d'oeuvres, a full bar setup, a woman playing something on a small keyboard in the corner. I got dressed carefully. I wore the same blue dress from the wedding because I hadn't bought anything new, and because it was still a good dress, and because I don't waste things. I came downstairs at 6:45. The party had started at 6:30. Noelle was near the door greeting people. She saw me coming down the stairs, and her expression did something quick that she covered immediately. She said, "Oh, you look nice." She said it the way you say it to someone who tried. I asked where Garrett was. She said he was talking with someone from his office and she'd let him know I was down. I found a place near the kitchen and I stood there. I watched people. I smiled when someone caught my eye. Nobody asked me who I was. I was in my son's house, and nobody asked me who I was. After about 20 minutes, I got a glass of water from the bar because I didn't want wine and I needed something to do with my hands, and I found a chair near the edge of the living room and I sat in it. Garrett found me at 7:15. He was flushed and happy, and he squeezed my shoulder and said, "Mom, you made it, good," as if I had just arrived. As if I hadn't been sitting in that chair for 30 minutes while he worked the room. He introduced me to exactly one person, a man named something I've already forgotten, as my mom. No other context. And then someone called his name from across the room and he said, "Sorry, 1 second," and he went, and he didn't come back for 45 minutes. At some point, Noelle's mother found me. She is a warm woman, genuinely warm, and she sat down and talked to me for a while about nothing important, and I was so grateful for it I could have cried. That tells you something. At 9 o'clock, I went upstairs. I told myself I was tired from the drive. I was tired from something, but it wasn't the drive. I lay in the guest room and I listened to the party through the floor. Laughter. Music shifting. The particular sound of a gathering where everyone belongs. I thought about the security deposit. I thought about the furnace. I thought about the gray suit and the photo in the elevator lobby. I thought about that 12-year-old boy with sauce on his chin and what he had promised me and whether he remembered that he had promised anything at all. I wasn't angry. That surprised me. I thought I would be angry, but I wasn't. I was something quieter and in some ways worse. I was clear. For maybe the first time in years, I was completely clear. I had made myself small for so long that I had started to believe I was small. I had given so much for so long that I had forgotten to notice I wasn't being given anything back. Not money. Not even presents. I was in my son's house on the night of his greatest celebration, and I had sat in a chair alone for 30 minutes, and not one person in that room, not even my son, had thought to come find me and say, "Come, let me introduce you. This is the woman who drove me to Ohio in a car with a broken window. This is the woman who made it possible." I was the context he had left out. The next morning was Sunday. Garrett made coffee, and we sat at the kitchen island, and he asked if I'd had a good time, and I looked at him. I looked at my son, this man I had built a life around, this person I had rearranged myself to accommodate, and I said, "No, I didn't." He blinked. I said, "I sat alone for most of last night. You introduced me to one person. You were gone for 45 minutes at a stretch. I drove 9 hours to be there, and I felt like a guest who hadn't been invited." He put his coffee mug down. He said, "Mom, it was a work thing. There were people I had to talk to." I said, "I understand that. I'm not asking you to have ignored your guests. I'm asking why I wasn't one of them." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Noelle worked really hard on this party. I don't want to get into something the morning after." I noticed what he didn't say. He didn't say, "You're right, I should have done better." He didn't say, "I'm sorry." He said Noelle worked hard, as if the conversation I was having was about Noelle, and not about me and my son and 30 years of something I was only now naming out loud. I said, "I'm not asking you to get into anything with Noelle. I'm talking to you." He said, "You're making this bigger than it is." And there it was, that sentence. The one that tells you everything, "You're making this bigger than it is." What he meant was, "Your feelings are inconvenient." What he meant was, "Please be smaller again." What he meant was, "I have gotten used to the version of you that doesn't ask for things." I finished my coffee. I said, "I'm going to head out soon." He said, "You just got here, stay for lunch." I said, "I think I'll go." He didn't stop me. That was its own kind of answer. I drove home on Sunday morning and I thought clearly for 9 hours. That had never happened before. 9 hours of clarity. Usually on long drives, I worried or I planned or I rehearsed conversations I would never actually have. This time, I thought about what I was willing to do going forward, not what I was willing to forgive. I wasn't there yet, but what I was willing to keep doing. I thought about the withdrawal from my retirement account. I thought about the fact that I was 63 and had not taken a real vacation in 4 years and had not bought a new winter coat in 3 and had transferred money to my son's account 7 times in 6 years and had never once received a phone call that wasn't about logistics or a request. I am not saying he didn't love me. I think he did, in the way people love things they've had for so long they've stopped seeing them. The way you love a piece of furniture that's always been in the corner. You'd miss it if it was gone, but you never think to thank it. I had been furniture. When I got home, I sat at my kitchen table and I made a list. Not a dramatic list, not a list of grievances. A practical list, the kind I am good at. The bookkeeper's list. What I had given, what I had not, what I had left, what I needed. The numbers were not good. I called my financial advisor the next week. I have a small one, a woman I've worked with for 10 years, and I told her I wanted to stop the transfers. The automatic one I had set up 2 years ago when Garrett said it would help them with cash flow. $1,000 a month, automatically, every first of the month. She said, "Good." Just that, good, and something about the flatness of it made me realize she had been waiting for me to say that for a while. I then did something I had not done in a very long time. I booked a trip, not a long one, not an expensive one, a long weekend in a town I had always wanted to see. Savannah, Georgia. Because I had read about it once in a magazine 20 years ago and thought, someday. I booked a small inn. I packed my blue dress and one other dress and walking shoes and a book I'd been meaning to read for 2 years. I went alone. And it was the best 3 days I had had in longer than I could say. Garrett called in October. About 6 weeks after the party. He called on a weeknight, not a weekend, which meant it wasn't a casual call. He said they were looking at refinancing the house and it wasn't going the way they'd hoped, and he wanted to know if I might be able to help with a lump sum. Not much, just to bridge a gap while the paperwork sorted out. I let him finish. Then I said, "I can't do that." Silence. I said, "I've stopped the automatic transfers too. I should have told you sooner. I'm sorry I didn't." He said, "What? Why?" I said, "Because I need what I have for myself. I'm 63. I don't have what I thought I had, and I need to stop spending as if I do." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Is this about the party?" It wasn't a question. He knew. I said, "It's about a lot of things. The party was one of them." He said, "Mom, I've already told you it was a work event I had a lot of." I said, "Garrett." And he stopped. "I'm not calling to discuss the party again. I'm telling you that I can't help financially right now. I hope you understand." He said, "I don't, actually." I said, "I know." We hung up and I sat for a long time without moving. He called again 2 weeks later. Noel's name didn't come up. He asked how I was doing, and I told him, and he told me about work, and it was a normal conversation, the kind we hadn't had in years. Just talking, not negotiating, not asking. Just 2 people who knew each other. Before he hung up, he said, "I've been thinking about what you said. About the party?" I said, "Okay." He said, "I think you were right that I didn't make you feel that it wasn't how it should have been." He didn't apologize. Not quite. But it was closer than I had expected. I said, "Thank you for saying that." He said, "I don't want you to feel like you're just, I don't want that." I said, "I know you don't." We were quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe I can come down for Thanksgiving. Just me, if that's okay." I said I would make chili. I don't know why I said that. I hadn't made chili in 27 years. But the words came out before I thought them, and once they were out, they felt right. Like something small and true, coming back. He said, "Yeah?" I said, "Yeah." We didn't fix everything on that call. We didn't fix most of it. But I hung up, and I walked to my kitchen and I looked in my pantry and I thought, I still know how to do this. I still know how to stand in my own kitchen and feed someone I love. I just had to remember I was allowed to eat too, what I know now that I didn't know then. There is a kind of love that hollows you out. Not because the other person is cruel, sometimes they are, but often they're not. But because love doesn't automatically teach you where you end and someone else begins. I raised my son to know his worth. I forgot to keep teaching myself. I gave and I gave and I was generous. And I called it love and it was love. It was. But it was also something else. It was the one voice I had that I knew he'd listen to. It was proof I was needed. It was the only way I knew to stay in the room. I don't need to be in the room that way anymore. I went to Savannah in the fall and I went to see the Spanish moss on the trees and I ate a bowl of she crab soup at a table by myself by a window and I thought, I have earned this. Not because I suffered, because I existed, because I am a person who has been on this earth for 63 years and worked hard and loved hard and stayed when it was hard to stay, and I am allowed to take up space. That's all I was ever asking for, really. Just space. Just to not be asked to wait in the back room while the party goes on without me. My son is coming for Thanksgiving. I bought a new winter coat last week, gray wool, fitted, on sale, but not store brand, not the one that was cheapest, the one I liked. It fits. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that Sunday morning in Garrett's kitchen. Not in a dramatic way. I'm not a dramatic person. But in the quiet, honest way you think about things when you finally stop moving long enough to look back at the trail you left. The truth is, nothing that happened was a surprise. Not really. Every step had a step before it. I gave the security deposit and it was easy, so I gave more. I made myself available, and nobody pushed back, so I made myself more available. I shrank a little at the wedding and didn't say anything, and so I shrank a little more at the party, and the next time it would have been smaller still. That's how it works. Not with one big moment, but with 100 small ones, each one teaching both people what's acceptable. I taught Garrett that I didn't need to be seen. I did that, not intentionally. I would never have chosen it, but I did it with every transfer. Every don't worry about me, every time I found the guest room myself and didn't say a word. What I understand now is that character isn't formed in the big moments. It's formed in the accumulation of small ones. Garrett didn't become someone who seats his mother in a corner because of one bad decision. He became that person because for years I modeled that it was okay. I modeled that love means giving without asking, tolerating without speaking, shrinking without complaint. I thought I was being generous. I was actually teaching him that I had no expectations. And people, even good people, will eventually live down to what you expect of them. That's not blame. That's just how it works. What I know about intelligence, real intelligence, not the kind measured in degrees or salaries, is that it requires you to look at your own role in things. It's easy to see what someone else did wrong. It costs something to see what you did that made it possible. I paid that cost. Finally, on a 9-hour drive home on a Sunday, and it was expensive, but I paid it, and now I have it. I know something I didn't know before. That knowledge is mine, and nobody can take it back. What I know about resilience is that it's not about not getting hurt. I got hurt. I sat in a room full of people celebrating my son's success, and I felt completely invisible, and that is a painful thing to feel, and I'm not going to dress it up. But resilience is what you do after. It's calling your financial advisor on a Monday morning with a clear voice. It's booking a trip you've wanted to take for 20 years. It's buying the coat you like, not the cheapest one. It's sitting at a table alone in Savannah with a bowl of soup and thinking, I have earned this. And what I know about doing right by the people you love, including your children, is that doing right doesn't always feel like love in the moment. It sometimes feels like withdrawal, like silence. like a door that's open but requires a knock. Garrett needed to knock. He did. And when he said he wanted to come for Thanksgiving, I said yes, because the door was always open. I just stopped holding it open for him. I don't know how Thanksgiving will go. I don't know if we will fix everything or just begin to. But I know I'll make chili. And I know I'll eat at the table, my table, in my kitchen. And I know I won't apologize for taking up space in my own life. That's enough to start with.